Good day, folks. This is going to be the last official video of the year. I will try to put together a complete finishing off of the shed as one massive video and share it to the classroom. But when we're done at this point, we're done learning all about the structural framing stuff, and it's taken a little longer than I expected. So we're going to stop the official lessons with this video. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to frame in the gables. We're going to talk about sagging roofs. We're going to talk about workflow in SketchUp and groups versus components in SketchUp. So these types of roofs that we've talked about, we've made this simplest gable roof over here. The most common and simple type of gable roof, it's just like an upside down V shape on top of the building, and the end walls are flat. When we're talking about framing in the gables, we're talking about these yellow spots. The word gable is sometimes used a couple of different ways in construction, but for today, we're just talking about getting some siding onto these areas to keep the weather out. It will look something like this. There has to be something to nail your siding to, so you have to build some wood in there. The other thing about sagging roofs that I said, this is the most extreme example that I could find, and it shows how the roof sags down in the middle and the walls are forced outwards in the middle. The end gables are actually held in a nice triangle by all of the framing that's in here to hold them straight. They're pulled inwards, but they still sort of hold their triangular shape. Now, this is a less extreme example, and this is something that somebody shared to a carpentry message board online and said, how do I fix this sagging roof on this shed? You can see that it's bowed downwards in the middle, and if you look at the lines of these two windows, you can see that they're sort of leaning outwards. So that wall has been pushed outwards at the top. So there's a view of the inside of that shed, and you can see there's nothing stopping those rafters from pushing outward. What happens is weight pushes down on the roof, and those rafters, they sort of press outwards on those walls in the end. If you can imagine pushing down in the middle of a triangle, it's going to try and spread out. So on our shed, we would have the weight pushing down, and that weight is sort of coming down the rafters and onto the walls. And our beautiful shed that we worked so hard to build could end up looking something like this if that happens. So what is done about that is to stop on the ends of the building these two walls from spreading out, which we accomplish that by, well, it's kind of naturally accomplished by having a double top plate there. The tops of these two walls here will not spread apart because they're held together by the double top plate. In the middle, and this is actually just a view of our roof with the fascia rafter removed. In the middle, there's nothing holding those rafters from pushing outward on the wall and spreading out. So we could add rafter ties like this. They're nailed into each rafter at the end of the rafter tie, and that will stop them from spreading out. Some people on a small shed like this might not worry about it, but it's kind of an important concept, so we'll add them to our shed just to make sure that we've got it good. When you're finished, we should have a rafter tie on each rafter, and that would hold that roof from spreading out the walls like that. Okay, moving into the SketchUp part of the lesson, guys. What I've done here, you guys all know how to hide things. I've hidden everything except for the stuff that has to do with the roof. So I've kept the two top plates, I've kept all the rafters and the ridge board and the fascia boards. I think really the two end rafters, the two fascia rafters, I kind of forgot them, and I should hide them so that we're looking at the very end rafter that meets up with the top plates here. So we're going to frame in the gables, and we're going to need a 2x4 somewhere near the middle of this. Well, we're going to end up putting it exactly in the middle of this, but it's kind of hard to predict. We're just going to draw a 2x4, and then we're going to shift it into its position. So somewhere near the middle of that 2x4, get yourself in the blue axis and do 1.5, comma 3.5, and that will make a rectangle that you can use for a 2x4. You'll pull it until it gets to the bottom of this ridge board, and then you can click that, and we'll make it into a group. So, sorry for the confusion here, but I'm going to have to stick this in because I failed to demonstrate how to make a group here. To make a group is the exact same as making a component. You click 3 times fast so that you get all the edges and all the surfaces selected, and then just instead of clicking make component, you click make group. That's all there is to it. Sorry for the confusion. We'll continue on with framing the roof. Now, the advantage of a group as opposed to a component is that you remember how when you change a component in one place in a drawing, it changes it everywhere? A group, you can copy to several different places and edit them individually, and they won't change everywhere in the drawing. So when we're going to have a bunch of different pieces that we're all going to edit and we're going to copy them, it's best to use a group. So we're going to move this now into the middle of the wall so that it's directly underneath the ridge board. And we will take that move tool and we will get right onto the corner of that group. And okay, we'll get right onto the corner of that group. And here we go. We're going to get it on the red axis and hold down the shift key, and then you even refer it to that corner again. Sometimes when I'm referring to that corner, it doesn't look like it's even doing it correctly, but as long as you're moving in a straight line, you can refer to different spots as long as you know what you're doing. So the next step, guys, is we're going to move this out to make more, and then we're going to edit those groups. So we'll gather this group up here and we will move it. We're just going to make, okay, we hit control, so we're copying it, get it moving on the red axis, and then enter 16, then enter X2, and that will be enough. So the advantage to the groups, like I said, you can edit this group, and what you'll do, you'll just draw a pencil line right on that where it intersects the rafter there, and you can pull that, and there, that's done. You can close that group. And you can then do the same thing with this other group over here. And it's a little quicker than having to make up individual pieces for each one, but you don't have the inconvenience of working with components where you're changing every component as you work. So that's all the pieces made for our framing for the gable. We just have to get these copied over to this side here. So to get these copied over to the other side, the simplest way is to rotate them over there. In order to do that, we're going to want to rotate them around the exact middle of the building. And the exact middle of the building, in this case, runs right straight down the center of the ridge board. And we can make ourselves a little spot to snap to by getting onto the edge of that ridge board with the tape measure tool and then pulling a construction line across to the middle of the ridge board. So we've got that construction line now, and that's what we're going to snap to when we rotate our pieces. If you want to have a really obvious spot to snap to, you could tape measure a construction line from the end of the ridge board to the middle of that of those rafters there. So now that's what we'll snap to when we go to rotate. Now I happen to already have these two pieces selected from the last process, so I'm going to zoom out and just get myself sort of pointed down. We go over here and you'll probably have the move tool selected, and you'll have to get the rotate tool, Make sure it's on the blue axis as you're working, and then you click once, and then you make sure you're on the red axis or on the construction line that you made, and you click again, and then you get back onto the red axis and you click again. Oh, I forgot to hit control to make two. So we'll start again. I still have them selected. I'm on my center mark that I made. I'm on the red axis. Click again. I hit control so that I'm duplicating it. I'm on the red axis again, and I'm there. Now, if you slow down and think about where all these lines go, you probably could save a step by moving that construction line back to this exact spot right here, because now I've rotated them out to where they're actually sticking out from where the edge of the shed, from where the edge of the wall of the shed is. So now I have to go back and get the move tool, and I will grab that very corner of that group, get it moving on the green axis, and hold down my shift key and move it onto that surface. And that is that set of gable studs done. Now, when I was talking about workflow before, using groups is one thing to make your workflow a little bit easier. When I was watching several videos in preparation for this, another person had a different trick that they do. If you become an expert at these things, you'll develop preferences, you'll develop your own ways of doing things. I just want to show you something that that person did, which was to select a bunch of different groups, and then I know I'm not going to have to change these things. I know I'm not going to have to work with them. My work on them is complete. So at this point, I could just make that whole set of groups into a component, and I have one component that is the gable end studs. So you can do that if you like. You guys are skilled enough now that you could really do this however you want. I just have to copy them. So if I get them right by that corner right there, and I start moving them, and I hit control, and I get them moving along the green axis and hold down my shift key, then I can move them back to where they are in line with. Let me zoom in just a little bit here. I want them in line with the edge of that. And that should be okay. So I've moved them all as one component, and I can just, we can actually move on now to doing the collar ties. So the rafter ties, folks, we're going to first, just before we even hide them, we'll paint bucket those two components that are the gable framing. And when we do the rafter ties, all we're really going to be able to need to see is one set of rafters to make them. So it will make life nice and easy if we just select and hide everything except for one of the interior sets of rafters. So if you can hide all of this stuff, and I don't even know what that little thing right there is. I'm going to delete it. You can hide you can hide all the end gable framing. And then get looking straight onto these rafters here. You can go ahead, and we're just going to draw them on there, okay? And it's actually, what we have to know though is how high to make this is just the steps of drawing this, okay? A 2x4 is 3.5 inches tall in this case. So you're going to get a construction line from the seat cut, moving on the blue axis, and you're going to make it 3.5 inches tall. That's just going to give you a line to refer to. And we're just going to draw from the top of the seat cut straight up, and you're moving along the blue axis here, and as you're moving along the blue axis, it will eventually snap to that edge. So you can draw a line to there, and then you would draw along that edge until you come to where it says intersection. Okay, there's an intersection. So now I have a line there, even though I can't really see it. You would come along here, along the red axis, until you find that intersection. And then I don't think we've really done so much of this yet, but if I hold my, my pencil right on that end point, and then I carefully move up, what's happening here is SketchUp is inferring that end point onto this edge. So I know that if I'm following straight up, and sometimes you lose your line for a second, but it's inferring to that edge so that when I can go on the blue axis right down to that edge, and that's all the sides done except for one, and I can come back across and I can join all this geometry, and then it will give me a flat plane, which I can then pull out 1.5 inches to make the collar ties. So I just get my push-pull, and I pull out 1.5, enter. Something went wrong there. I'm going to undo that. Okay, having a little trouble here. 1.5. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I know that I am done with that. I'm not going to have to edit this anymore, so I can make that into a component. And I can unhide everything else in the drawing and just copy that. In fact, what I'll do, I'll paint bucket it first. I'll unhide everything else in the drawing. So I had a little trouble there with, well, I just ran into a bit of a problem. I had to do a cut and retake. I said I was going to unhide everything, so there, everything is now unhidden. And now I have to move this rafter, or I have to move this rafter tie, sorry. I have to copy it so that each set of rafters has a rafter tie holding them together. So I'm going to get onto the edge of that component, and I'm going to start to move it, and I'm going to hit Control to duplicate it, and I'm going to make sure that I'm moving on the green axis, and I'm just going to hit 16, because I know that all of these sets of rafters are 16 inches apart, at least the ones that we're working on. So I hit 16, and then I hit X7, and that's it. That's the shed framing done. All the major structural components of it are in there. So that, guys, is the end of the project. Like I said, I will try to have another video of how to put the siding and everything on, but that's sort of optional if you're interested. The other thing you could end up doing is to delete all your guides, and that would be 100% complete. Okay, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Like I said at the start, learning any type of 3D modeling or drafting software is a major task, and if you've made it this far, congratulations, good job, and hopefully we'll see you next year. And if you do have any questions about any of this, guys, let me know. I'll be happy to get back to you.